Let us pray. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come. Bless the members of this chamber and all who assist their work as representatives of the people. We begin with prayer to acknowledge our dependence on you as our Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. So may the strength of God pilot us. May the power of God preserve us. May the wisdom of God instruct us. May the hand of God protect us. May the way of God direct us. And may the shield of God defend us. So, Lord God, what we know not, teach us. What we have not, give us. And what we are not, make us, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session. I wish to acknowledge the presence of Artie Harnarain and her dad, Mr. Harnarain, to this honorable chamber. I hope that you enjoyed today's proceeding and that it will be conducted in civility so that you'll be able to appreciate and understand what goes on in this honorable chamber. Minutes for the meeting held on Tuesday, October 12, 2021 to be confirmed. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be confirmed.
The question that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby confirmed. Minutes for the joint meeting held on Wednesday, October 20th, 2021 to be deferred. And minutes for the meeting held on Wednesday, October 20th, 2021 to be also deferred.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
The question that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by Your Honour, the Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency the Governor General.
Her Excellency the Governor General to the Honourable the House of Assembly. Her Excellency the Governor General hereby informs the Honourable the House of Assembly of the following. Section 60, subsection 1 of the Constitution provides that each session of Parliament shall be held at such place and commence at such time as the Governor General may appoint. Her Excellency hereby informs the Honourable the House of Assembly that by proclamation dated 25th day of October 2021, that Her Excellency appointed the Worthing Corporate Centre, Worthing, Christchurch, as the place at which the continued session of Parliament shall be held, and 10:00 hours in the morning on Tuesday 26th day of October 2021, as the time at which the said session shall commence. Signed, Governor General, dated 26 October 2021.
Petitions, papers, government notices.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the Barbados National Honours and Decorations Bill 2021.
Private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the first reading of the Barbados National Honours and Decorations Bill 2021.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read the first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motion for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 9, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the second reading of the Debt Settlement Arrears Bill 2021.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning to make a contribution in respect of this bill, but I'm very aware, sir, that we are operating in an environment where the dissemination of information, sir, particularly from those persons who we would like to believe, sir, are responsible, is something that has caused me a little bit of concern, particularly as we try to navigate what has been an extraordinary set of circumstances because of the onset of COVID-19. But because equally, sir, we have had to deal with additional issues in relation to natural disasters, namely, sir, the eruption of the volcano in St. Vincent, sir, last February, as well as Hurricane Elsa, which touched us, sir, and left quite a number of Barbadians, sir, dislocated, which this government is seeking to respond to their needs. And the reason that I feel very strongly this morning, sir, because I as you know, sir, I don't typically allow my emotions to show on my sleeve. But this government, sir, has worked too hard, and I certainly, sir, have worked too hard over the course of the last 20 months or so to try to give Barbadians, sir, a sense of calm, assurance, sir, with respect to the nature of the conduct of the affairs of this country and this government on their behalf, sir. To allow persons who I say quite frankly, sir, who should know better, ought to know better, and that it is disappointing to see things being said in the way that they're being said, sir, as to suggest that this government is somehow complicit in some grand, nefarious conspiracy to expose Barbadians. And I'm going to speak very candidly, sir, because I woke up this morning buoyed by the fact that, as you know, sir, what this week means to all of us. And I put on my WhatsApp status, sir, quite innocently, that a breach of common sense, sir, is a breach of the school rules. And one of my constituents replied, sir, to that very message with what I could only express my utter disappointment, not in the fact that no less a person who also attended that very hallowed place, sir, seeking to assert that somehow this government, in the context of what we're going to discuss, I'm going to discuss this morning, sir, that somehow this government and the leadership of this government, notwithstanding the extraordinary impact that COVID-19 has had, sir, on this economy, that this government, sir, and the government is all of us, sir, all of us, including those in the Senate. And the reason I start here, sir, because if the people of Barbados cannot see and hear from all of us in leadership, sir, what the reality is that is confronting this country, and whilst we may not all agree with specific decisions that this government has had to undertake with respect to keeping this country safe and to try to keep as many Barbadians safe, sir, from the worst that COVID has had to unleash globally. And if we cannot, as a matter of respect, understand that what we say and how we say it, sir, actually impacts the decisions that ordinary Barbadians will undertake, sir, then my fear is that as we seek to navigate a new phase of the management of this pandemic, sir, and as the government tries to give the clear assurance to every Barbadian that we will do whatever is required, sir, to save lives, to allow persons to start to earn and look after themselves and their families again, sir, and that what we are trying to achieve is something, sir, that is against all odds. That what we are trying to achieve is to bring back a sense, not just of normalcy, because I don't anticipate things are going to be normal as we know it for some time, but at least to allow Barbadians to feel a sense of comfort, that we can resume as much economic activity as possible, such that the relationship between the government, and I say the government, sir, including all of us, the government and the people, and particularly, sir, the government in this case extends to very clearly the public health professionals who are every day, sir, working 24/7, along with the private doctors in this country, sir, working 24/7, trying to keep people safe, sir, that is the extent to which the state, the government, sir, is going to be seeking to continue to ensure that we can manage this pandemic and the effects of the pandemic as best we can. I start here, sir, because it is I believe, sir, it is criminal. I know, sir, you operate in the criminal space, but I believe, sir, it is criminal for anybody, far less, sir, a member of any of these chambers, sir, to support any assertion that this government is engaged in any activity, sir, to vaccinate Barbadians at the promise of some set of money that we have been given, that we have put Barbadians, sir, as somehow sacrificial lambs to test vaccines, sir. And I say so, sir, because it is important that the leadership, not just of government, sir, but the leadership, and I speak specifically, sir, and I make reference to the leader of the opposition right now. Because the statements being made, sir,
Point of order, honourable member.
Point of order. Could it be proper for the honourable member to attribute criminal conduct and behavior to a member of this honourable chamber or the other place, Mr. Speaker? I'm sure that that is what I heard. And emphasize it is criminal. No, he links it with the opposition in the other place and the opposition in his house. I ask that that be withdrawn. In fact, he should apologize for that.
Mr. Speaker, if I may be allowed to finish my statement.
Honourable member, did you say criminal conduct?
No, I did not. I said I believe it is criminal. I never said anything about criminal conduct, sir.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member for Christchurch East Central, firstly, is reflecting on the conduct of members from the other place. He referred to what they said as being criminal. He then linked their behavior somehow to the office of the leader of the opposition in this place. That is highly improper. And I think that he must withdraw those remarks. In fact, he should apologize to this House.
Mr. Speaker,
Honourable member, if you have attributed any nefarious activity bordering on any criminal intent and or conduct on behalf of persons in this honourable hallowed chambers or in the other place, those remarks are not to be uttered in this honourable chamber.
sir, if that is your ruling, I accept that, sir.
Mr. Speaker, point
And
of
I-
order.
and
I
I-
think not only should remarks not be made in this, he should withdraw them and apologize.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition, while I understand what you may desire, I am the person who conduct these proceedings in this chamber.
Mr. Speaker, if it would make the honourable leader of the opposition comfortable, sir, and I take your ruling, sir, I shall withdraw the statement, sir, because the leader of the opposition, sir, is supporting by his response, I can only assume, is supporting the notion, sir, that this government is somehow in collaboration.
Honourable member, even before you, please say so I can speak. Honourable member, even before you premise and or preface those remarks, I do not welcome those remarks. I do not think that you're going down the correct path this morning. I do not think that you should go down that
Mr.
path.
Speaker,
To attribute and or, in essence, give the inference that the leader of the opposition might be condoning that conduct. I do not think that you ought to go down that line of speaking, sir.
okay, sir. I accept your ruling, sir. However, as Barbadians navigate, sir, a very stressful time in this country, sir, as Barbadians navigate a very stressful time in this country, sir, people who are in public office, sir, including anybody who is appointed by any member of this place to serve the public, sir, ought to be aware of the responsibility that they have, sir, to the people. To the people, sir. And that all of us in this place, sir, all of us, all 30 of us, sir, were elected by the people in May of 2018, sir, with the exception of the Honourable Member for St. George North, who came in to Parliament last year.
Honourable Leader.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Surely you guide this House. But at some time, I suppose the honourable member will connect with the bill that is before us.
I make that determination, Honourable Leader of Opposition. I make that determination. And
Mr. Speaker.
no one else
Mr. Speaker,
has the authority but myself.
Mr. Speaker, sir, if the honourable member would permit me to connect to the bill instead of interrupting, sir, which is his right to do, but if you will allow me to connect to the bill, sir, that is important. But in making the connection to the bill, sir, is important for the people of this country to understand and appreciate that what we do here in this place, in their name, sir, that what we do here is in their best interest. And that the conduct, sir, of all of us, the conduct of all of us, sir, is important. So whilst the bill here this morning, sir, speaks about arrears and how we're going to settle them, sir, that is not the substance of the matter today, sir. Because it is not the substance, sir, because the reason I believe, sir, and sir, I'm leading the bill. I'm leading the bill. But when we have public officials appointed, sir, duly appointed, sir, asserting that this government receive money for vaccines, or the promise of money, sir, for vaccines, and that we somehow, sir, have put Barbadians on the front line with respect to vaccines and the administration of vaccines, sir, is to tarnish not just all of us in this place, sir. And I say leadership matters, sir, because you cannot have someone or anyone or any affiliates, as far as I'm concerned, sir, as far as I am concerned, seeking to go out and mislead the public, that this government was promised money, received money, and if I heard correctly, sir, there was an assertion that the government, through the Ministry of Finance, received $261 million that we ain't got to pay back, sir. If I heard properly. And, sir, to my certain knowledge, and it says so, sir, categorically, today, I can say to you, through you, sir, to the leader of the opposition, to all the members of this place, to all the members of the other place, and certainly, sir, to every single Barbadian. Because there has been this notion, sir, that somehow the Barbados government is receiving money to vaccinate Barbadians. And it has risen to the level where a member of the other place, sir, has gone on the public record to indicate that the Ministry of Finance and this government that we have received money in relation to this thing. So I want to link, and I hope the member, the honourable member, the honourable leader of the opposition, he's listening very carefully. Because you want me to connect to the bill, I'm connecting to the bill, sir, to assert that this government has received $261 million that it does not have to repay, sir, when I, sir, do not know of any monies that we have received.
Honourable member.
I am sorry I have to interject again, Mr. Speaker. Honourable is misleading this House grossly. The Leader of the Opposition in this Honourable House has never said that this government received any $261 million for any vaccines. I do not know how much money the government received, Mr. Speaker.
I simply ask the Leader of the Opposition to listen, sir, to what was said and what was asserted, sir. Because the people of this country, sir, through you, I want to explain, sir, through you, that when the COVID pandemic hit, sir, because we have gone through a debt restructuring, which we are all aware of, sir, and that is why we are here today, sir, to speak to this bill in this way, sir, would understand that when we took over the management of this country's affairs, sir, in May of 2018, that when we inherited from the last administration, sir, a whole set of arrears for which this specific bill will speak to, and we set up, sir, the Series F bonds, which were issued to repay the NIS, sir, for the 3 years that the last government did not pay national insurance contributions for public servants, sir, to pay for all of the gas and diesel, sir, that was procured from the fuel suppliers that were used, sir, by the Transport Board or SSA, sir. We're still paying for that with the Series F bonds, sir. To pay for all of the goods and services, sir, that we had to structure a program, sir, to respond to ensure that Barbadians, companies and individuals, sir, had supplied goods and services to the government and were not paid. We did that. And therefore, when this pandemic hit, sir, because we were meeting our targets, this government was able to go, we went to the international community, sir, in response to the pandemic, and we received additional resources. Because our revenue, sir, dropped by about $600 million, sir, because the economy contracted by over $2 billion, sir, last year. But what the public needs to be aware of, sir, is that the government did not cut the provision of goods and services with respect to what the government was offering, but the revenue dropped. And we were able, sir, to finance the difference, the $600 million in revenue, sir, that was lost. We were able to finance because we were able to get additional resources, sir, from the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, sir, and the IDB, sir, with respect to being able to help us to finance our way through this very torturous journey, sir. And each of those loans, sir, each of them, because we had already, with the, as you know, sir, because we are in a fund program, every time we pass our 6-month review, there's a disbursement. That's part of the structure. But all of the other financing that we have received, sir, well, from the beginning, as is always customarily the case, sir, every loan agreement comes to this Parliament, sir, and is laid in this Parliament for every single member of Parliament, sir, whether in the lower house or in the upper house, sir, to read and know what are the terms and conditions with respect to that, sir. They come to this place, and we have done so. And any official of government, sir, any official of government who determines that they will not avail themselves of the facts, sir, of the facts, and go out into the public domain for some strange reason, sir, and to assert and to attribute some nefarious activity that this government, that we don't care about Bajans, I find that insulting, sir. I find it insulting. And you know what's hurtful, sir? And the reason that it really pains me is that, and I make reference only in the context of leadership, sir. I voted for a gentleman, sir, on May 24th. You understand, sir? I voted for a gentleman on May 24th. And I thought that gentleman, sir, was worthy of my vote on May 24th, sir. I thought he was worthy of my vote on May 24th.
Let him finish.
Correct.
I thought he was worthy of my vote, sir, on May 24th, 2018. But the kind of conduct, sir, that I am seeing exhibited now, where the country, sir, the country really needs leadership, sir. It needs leadership at all levels. And the rest of us, sir, have been trying to pull this country along this very torturous path, sir. This is very torturous, and it's hard. It is hard. And to be somehow, in any way, sir, associated with...
I remember. Point of order, sir.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I think the honourable member is misleading the House
From what perspective, honourable member?
and is imputing less than honourable character, conduct
To whom?
to my
Honor-
honourable self.
You
because
can-
he referred, Mr. Speaker,
Please, I'm listening.
if you would allow me,
Continue, I'm
he
listening.
referred to the person for whom he voted in the last election, and as far as I know, he voted in St. Michael West, so that must be a reference to myself. You can guide me if I'm wrong.
I am guiding you, sir. You never say, your name was, there were two candidates. Honourable member, please sit while I speak, sir. Please. No name was mentioned. You were not, honourable member, you were not the only candidate in the election. If I may say that.
Thank you for your,
So he never said that he voted for you, honourable member, so no inference
thank you
can
for
be
your,
drawn to that.
thank you for your intervention, Mr. Speaker. But I think we're all clear that the honourable member is indicating a vote for myself. There were more than 2 people in the last election. In fact, I correct you. There were more than 2. But he couched his remarks in the context of leadership, in a speech in which he's questioning the quality of leadership from this seat with respect to behavior in the other place. And Mr. Speaker, he is attributing less than honourable worthy character to myself. I voted for a man who I thought was worthy. I know, Mr. Speaker, we vote for people because of the character we perceive them to be possessed of. We vote for people because of what we think they will do for us or because of what they have done for us. And perhaps the honourable member for Christchurch East Central can speak to what this honourable member did for him personally and for his family for years.
Honourable member, I see no point of order. See no point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I would hope that the honourable member would adopt the same posture with those whom he's affiliated with.
But,
Sir.
honourable member,
And I say so,
honourable
sir.
member, please listen, please. Let us not become personal.
Sir, this is not personal.
So please
Sir,
listen,
no,
honourable member, please listen. And I will let you to say it when I speak. This chamber is a hallowed chamber. Ought to be conducted with a degree of decorum We have come here to debate the people's business. There is no need to descend into certain arenas that lend itself to chaos and confusion. There is a young lady who has come to visit this chamber for the first time in her young life. In acknowledging the presence of Ms. Harriet Narang, the first thing I ask is that I hope that this sitting this morning would have been conducted with a degree of civility. We owe it to our young people to express civility and to see the conduct of our affairs in the public domain that way. I would very much appreciate if the debate could go along those lines. Continue, Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much for the clarity you have provided, because I think it is important that young people be given the example, sir, to follow. My grandmother, sir, raised me. I like to think, sir, that she did a reasonable job. I like to think so. And the idea, sir, of leadership is important for young people. And it's for precisely that reason, sir, that as a young person, myself, that I can stand here and say that leadership is important, sir. It is important. And I say to the young lady, welcome to the chamber, and I say to all young people that we, the leaders of this country, yes, we must be held accountable. And we must be held accountable in the context of how we are, not just how we are conducting the people's business, but what we allow to take place, sir, in the conduct of the people's business. That is what is important, sir, as part of this discussion, because I make no bones about it, sir. I make no bones about it. This country is at a point, sir, at a point where there needs to be consistency in the example of leadership, sir, at all levels, with respect to what constitutes public discourse, sir, and that there must be consistency from all quarters with respect to government as well as civil society, sir, with respect to our communication. And the truth is, sir, we can all agree to disagree. You may not like a decision that has been taken. You may not like the way that some things are determined at a particular point in time. But this government has been committed not just, sir, to the reforms that we have been undertaking, sir. This government is committed to ensuring that we can keep as many Barbadians safe. And if Barbadians, sir, are receiving information from sources, sir, that people and young people, especially, in receiving said information, must be able to not just trust, but to believe, sir, that the integrity and the credibility, sir, of its government, of their government, that they can trust us, sir. That is important. And so I say to the young lady that this debate this morning, whilst we are here to discuss the debt settlement arrears bill, that we can't do it and not understand the context, sir, for which things are being said. Because the same young people out there, sir, will see that video and somehow attribute some connection that the government, of which I am a part, for which we are all a part, sir, is somehow in cahoots with somebody. And I say, sir, that is wrong. That is wrong, sir. The words that my grandmother may have used, sir, I can't use here because Parliament has its rules with respect to it, sir, but it is wrong, sir. It is wrong. Now I know, sir, and this is the regrettable part, because as much as the government has been trying to put information out into the public domain, these social media posts, sir, the truth is, sir, you really can't make some of this stuff up. You really can't. But I assert to every Barbadian, sir, and I deny, sir, in the strongest possible terms, sir, the government of Barbados has not received any money from anybody, sir, in relation to vaccines, as any condition for anything, sir, and further, that the management of the fiscal affairs of this country, sir, the management of the fiscal affairs of this country continues, sir, to be managed in a way that the young lady and every young person in this country, sir, can feel a sense of pride that this government continues to manage the public affairs of this country, sir, with the highest integrity. It is critical, sir. It is critical, and I, as I told you, sir, I woke up this morning to come here to present this bill with a different frame of mind, because I was going to talk, sir, about how, because of COVID, the disruption with respect to our debt to GDP metrics and all of that, sir, I was going to talk about all those things, sir. Until I saw that nonsense, sir. That nonsense. Nonsense. And somebody has to say that it is nonsense, sir. And I know that the people of this country, sir, are tired. They're frustrated. The impact of COVID, sir, has disrupted many lives, sir. Many lives. And at a juncture now where, sir, we are trying to get, one, sir, as many people vaccinated so that we can lift restrictions, sir, so that we can start to see, for the very young people, sir, some of whom may have left school, sir, in the last 18 months, but they're in a job. For the young people, sir, they're in a job because COVID and the restrictions associated to protect people, sir, those restrictions have meant that the number of jobs that would ordinarily be available, sir, were not available. And therefore, rather than trying, sir, to try to encourage as many Barbadians, sir, to accept that part of the way forward is not just the vaccination, sir, but certainly the following of the protocols, so that jobs can come back to the very young people, sir, that this government has been trying so hard to try to provide as many opportunities for, so that the public, the private sector, sir, can see a return to activity that would facilitate, sir, the absorption of jobs for these very young people, sir, that we're trying to set this example for. That this debate, sir, is not just about how the government can settle the arrears, and that's important. Trust me, that's important. That is important, sir. And I will also take this opportunity, sir, to address, permit me, sir, because it is related, since we are discussing the notion of the government receiving monies for vaccines, which don't have to be repaid, sir. I want to, through you, sir, because as I was coming in to the Parliament, sir, I just heard the introduction of one of the calling programs today. And you know, sir, it is interesting how the narrative gets out there. It is carried, and people repeat things, sir, without, sir, sometimes stepping back and looking at what is the bigger picture. Now, sir, through you, I want to remind the public, sir, that when we are having a discussion about the price of vaccines, so let's permit me a minute, sir. When we are discussing the price of vaccines, and that the developed countries, sir, have purchased vaccines for $2 and $3 a dose, US dollars, sir, per dose, right? And we try to connect what Barbados have had to pay for vaccines, sir, or would pay for vaccines. It completely ignores the fact, sir, it completely ignores the fact that more than $18 billion, sir, were put in by the world's Western economies, United States, as well as European countries, sir. More than $18 billion, sir, in the development costs associated with the said vaccines. So if you understand that if you paid for something, sir, in its development, then when it comes onto the market, sir, then you get a preferential rate. But it's not just that you get a preferential rate as well, sir. You are getting those prices on the basis, sir, of purchasing 30 million doses, sir, 50 million doses, sir, because that is scale, sir. So I came into this Parliament this morning, sir, to have a discussion about that. But I want Barbadians, permit me, sir, to hear my voice. You cannot have a discussion about what the United States or Europe, sir, on the basis of what they have paid for vaccines, when they are the ones who finance, sir, the development of the vaccines. So if we are going to have an open discussion with our young people, sir, so that this information is being propagated in the public, then all of us, sir, have a responsibility, all of us, to tell the very young people the truth, sir. Barbados did not put a cent into the development of vaccines. You think we had $1 billion to just go and put into vaccines when we lost $600 million in revenue, sir? That we could then say that we could get vaccines at $2 or $3 or $5 a dose, sir? Barbados and CARICOM, sir, joined with the African continent in an attempt through COVAX, sir, to try to procure vaccines at scale. And even then, sir, it was not enough to be able to vaccinate people. So the cost that Barbados would pay for 300,000 doses, sir, of vaccines, when people talking about 30 million doses and 50 million doses a batch to get that scale, sir, will you think you can pay for 300,000 doses of vaccine, sir? You think you can pay the same $2 or $3 a dose, sir? That's basic demand and supply, sir. And therefore, when people come into any of these places, sir, to have a public discussion, I just would like to appreciate the young people to appreciate that the world, sir, operates on the basis of, I would say, rules, sir. And therefore, in the context of the procurement of any of these things, sir, you got to appreciate that there's something called economies of scale. And Barbados and the Caribbean and even the African persons in Africa, sir, did not finance the development of the vaccines. And when the developed world, sir, determined that because they finance the cost of the vaccine, they're to get first dibs, sir, because you don't pay for something as is reasonable. You don't pay for something, it becomes available, and you start gaining weight, sir. You got to make sure that thing, that's what normal people would do. And that is unfortunately what happened, even though we had an arrangement with respect to COVAX. And vaccine availability and inequity, sir, is a different subject. But the reality is, sir, had Barbados if we had $1 billion, sir, or $500 million that we could have put in the pot, we might have been able to buy vaccines at $1, sir, but we would have paid $500 million or $200 million, whatever it is, as part of the development cost. So the discussion about the procurement of vaccines, I believe, sir, for the benefit of our young people, has to be placed in its proper context. And therefore, I say to the young lady who's here today, as well as all the other young people who may be listening or may hear something, if nothing else, sir, just take that little bit, sir, of basic economics into consideration, so that when people get on social media, sir, and talk whatever it is that they're talking, that you can correct them. And I would just ask the young people to be respectful. People can say what they want to say, but the reality, sir, the truth is the truth, and we live in this space. And the government of Barbados has had to go out and try its best to secure vaccines so that we can keep as many of our people safe, so that we can manage this pandemic. But I come back to the bill, sir. I come back to the bill. Because we are operating in a circumstance because of the state of the economy, sir. And as I said, COVID has meant that we have had to give the Ministry of Health, sir, the Ministry of Health, first dibs, sir, every time we dip in the pot, sir. You know, sir, your grandmother cook a rice and stew or a pot of soup, sir, and you're dipping, and you're hoping that with every spoonful, sir, that you could get a piece of meat or some dumplings, sir. We've had to give the meat and the dumplings, sir, to the Ministry of Health to make sure that they can keep Barbadians safe, sir. And everything else that we have been trying to do, sir, we have made adjustments within the context of the budget. We've tried to delay things, sir, just to make sure that we can give to the Ministry of Health, sir, the adequate resources that they need in order to be able to manage the pandemic. And they say to Barbadians, every time there's a surge with respect to numbers of COVID, and the reason that we have been trying, sir, so hard to contain the numbers, and you will see that we've reached a point where we've had to go in a different direction with respect to the management of the pandemic, sir. Every time there's a surge, the Ministry of Health, as well as the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, sir, demands more cash, sir, to be able to respond for testing, as well as the care with respect to the number of persons. And that is as basic, sir, as you can get. And in the context of the numbers escalating as they have been, sir, it means that the cash burn, the cash requirement, the financing requirement, sir, to continue to manage the pandemic in the way that we have, has simply meant, sir, that in terms of what we have had to do, we have moved, sir, from running a 6% primary surplus, sir, and we are now at just about 1.5%, sir, deficit. And I don't say so lightly, sir. And we've had to finance that because of we've been able, sir, and the only reason that we have been able to finance it is because people were prepared to lend Barbados money again, sir. The last government, sir, nobody wouldn't lend them nothing unless it was at 13 or some well numbers, sir. And therefore, as we get through this pandemic, sir, I say to Barbadians that it is tough, but we can get through this, you know, sir. We can get through this. And we can get through it because I want to say it to the same young people. I know it's frustrating. You want to go out online. You want to do all these things. But we are all connected, sir. Everything is connected. So when you go and you think that you're hiding and you're liming with your friends and whatever, eventually, sir, regrettably, it is going to come back at some point into your household or your family, sir, because all of us, sir, at some point, or most of our circumstances, my aunt lived there, my grandmother there, my uncle over there, sir, I live here, my neighbor next door, we type, sir. So you got about 4 or 5 houses, sir, that in a small space, everybody's family, sir. So when we go and think that we're doing what we're doing and trying to get there because we want to be cool, regrettably, what that has meant, sir, unfortunately, is the transmission, sir, the transmission has meant that regrettably some of our elderly persons who aren't necessarily going out and about doing these things, sir, have contracted this virus and regrettably passed, sir. And if for nothing, and I mean, sir, I know family relations are complex, but we know, sir, we know, all of us in this place know, because all of us, sir, and I say all, all of us, sir, canvass the length and breadth of this country, sir, and we know the connections in terms of the overlapping generations, sir, in terms of households in this country. And that many households in this country, sir, prior to us coming to office, the single thing that perhaps, sir, was keeping households together in this country, sir, was the pension of your grandmother or your grandfather in the house, sir. All of us in here know it, given what we saw. And I say to young people, you shouldn't just look after yourself because the government in of itself is thing, but if only for a selfish reason, sir. If only for a selfish reason. The fact that we have many households, sir, that depend on elderly pension income, sir, on elderly pension income, ought to be, in any rational person's mind, sir, a reason to keep yourself safe, so that at least the stability within your household can be maintained. People may not want to hear that, sir, but that is the reality of which a number of our constituents are facing, sir. So I say to the young people, you have a choice. You have a choice. You're either going to listen to people who will take you down a path for which there really is no clear or credible outcomes, or you listen to those who are responsible, sir. You listen to your government and allow us the opportunity, sir, to be able to bring back not just the economy, but to bring back communities, sir, to bring back the things that we know that we would like to be able to do in a safe way. But you have a responsibility to play in being able to achieve that. Now, I must say, sir, we have made significant strides, certainly over the past 7 months, sir. 7 months with respect to the vaccination. The uptake could be a bit higher, sir. But the reality is, and I'm saying to Barbadians, and I say so, sir, purely from, and this is not to be in any way interpreted as any dissent, because no people like to its perspective, sir. Our priority is to save people, sir. And therefore, you got to accept that within the context of the Ministry of Finance and trying to finance, sir, the things and the demands that people are asking for, whether it is the adopt a family, sir, whether it is the increased welfare grants that we have been able to do, sir. We're still trying to respond to a number of things across the country, sir. My constituents, sir, in Christchurch East Central, people still want the roads fixed, sir. Still want the roads fixed, as is the case for many other people across the country, sir. The country has been responding to ensure that we give the Barbados Water Authority enough financing to be able to deliver water, sir. Water to people in the northern parishes, sir. And that too is a priority which we have been making available to government. But it is difficult to get people to appreciate sometimes, sir, that these are the priorities that the government that we have made. But whenever, sir, I see the directives come up, sir, and I see the numbers with respect to where the cases are going, I look at it, sir, and I'm asking myself, at what point will Barbadians recognize that we have it, sir, within ourselves to be able to deal with this thing? Because whether I like it or not, sir, the Ministry of Health is looking after the interests of every Barbadian. I would love, sir, for people to be able to go out at night, the young people and everybody to go out at night, sir, and do what they got to do in a responsible way. But up until now, sir, we have not demonstrated sufficiently the capacity to be able to do so. And the critical, and I think the critical point here, sir, is to ensure that even with the increase in cases, we want to ensure that we limit the number of deaths. We want to limit the number of deaths, sir. So, the maintenance of the curfew, sir, certainly has an impact on economic activity, because it means that at 9 o'clock, when the curfew comes in, sir, it means that there are no more VAT transactions, sir, that we will get revenue from, sir, in the way that we would normally do. Because the truth is, sir, the nighttime economy, as Barbados, as prior to the pandemic, sir, we were already in the process of making that shift where the nighttime economy, sir, was starting to take on a little more prominence, if you like, sir, with respect to the number of transactions that will allow us to be able to collect tax revenue. And I make that point, sir, because as we're discussing a debt bill, the financing of government's policy agenda requires economic activity, but it also requires us to be able to borrow if there's a shortfall. And when you lose $600 million in revenue, sir, and we impress upon people, follow the protocols so that we could get vaccinated, so that we can credibly relax some of the restrictions, so that young people, sir, could get some work too, you know, sir. Because the more people employed, sir, it allows us, the government, to be able to help and more easily finance our operations. So this discussion here, sir, this morning, this bill today, as I said to you, sir, is it takes on for me, sir, a more the wider substance of it is what is expressed here, sir. What I'm trying to say, what is expressed in the bill today, sir, does not reflect the context in which we are operating, sir. And that's why I took the time this morning to outline for Barbadians, and for those of us who have responsibility, or will wish to acknowledge that we have responsibility, because the truth is, anyhow, don't let me go there, sir, who wish to acknowledge that we have a responsibility, would appreciate that the state of where the economy is at the moment with respect to not just the curfew, but the kinds of activity that we would like to see. The truth is, sir, the numbers are looking reasonably well with respect to tourism and other activities. But the truth is, we need to get to a place, sir, relatively quickly, where economic activity, sir, is back to normal, sir, in inverted commas, normal, where people can go out and do what they have to do, sir, night or day. And even though living with COVID means that there will still be people that contract it, what this government desires, and desires very strongly, sir, is that people not die from the virus. And therefore that means that protection, sir, of which vaccines form a part, is absolutely important. And that, sir, I cannot underscore how important that is, because we need to understand that in this journey, sir, people are looking at what is happening in Barbados in the context of how we've been able to manage this pandemic so far. Not for the reasons that some may assert that we some kind of case study, that people have this particular interest in Barbados because they were somehow we were testing vaccines on people, sir. But the way in which a small island developing state, sir, can navigate what certainly has been a very stressful set of circumstances, sir, that we have been able to do so and still maintain a public policy posture which is as responsive as it ever could be in the circumstances, so that Barbadians can still enjoy the provision of public services, even though affected by the implementation of protocols. And the truth is, sir, that that is important because our ability, sir, our ability to finance our way through this pandemic, as I speak to you here this morning, sir, the way forward depends on Barbadians. It depends on Barbadians, sir, and what Barbadians do, what they do every day. And that is critical for all of the young people, sir, to understand, all of the demographics, sir, to understand. And the truth is, sir, sometimes, you know what that means, sir? I remember, sir, my grandmother used to give me that castor oil, sir. I didn't like it. But my grandmother gave me the castor oil, clean me out. And she says, sir, before school start, sir. And it means that within our families and our communities, that people are going to have to take a greater sense of responsibility for themselves, sir. And say for those that we love, that we have to do what we have to do to ensure that we can make it through. We have to take that personal responsibility, sir. And taking that personal responsibility, in addition to following the protocol, sir, is what will help us to be able to not just relax what is taking place, the directives, but certainly the net result would be to ease the financing with respect to what is going on here. Now, sir, I am very clear, and I want Barbadians to be very clear, that as we continue to press ahead, and you will realize, I hope that Barbadians will realize that we have spent a lot of time responding to COVID. And I hope that Barbadians have taken the signals with respect to the transition away from what many may interpret, sir, as the prime focus, because COVID still is a critical factor affecting the country. But the government is transitioning again, to being able to focus on other areas of governance, sir, under the improvement of delivery of programs of government. And I am asking Barbadians, young and old, and everybody in between, sir, to work with the government and the various agencies, particularly, sir, the public health officials, without whom, sir, and without their sacrifice, Barbados really would not be where we are today. But that Barbadians now need to fully accept that responsibility now for how we will go forward is entirely up to us. And vaccines form a layer of protection. And as you know, sir, if you get in your car, sir, and you put on your seatbelt, you accept that it is a form of protection. But if you drive down the road at 300 miles an hour, sir, in your car, you know that the seatbelt really is of little protection in those circumstances. But the point is, it is a form of protection. And our goal is to keep as many Barbadians alive as possible with respect to being able to manage this pandemic. And this debt bill before the chamber, sir, is part of how, as a result of not just the impact of COVID, but because the significant arrears in relation to land acquisition, sir, as well as outstanding legal claims, sir, has meant that with the approaching deadline, the current Series F bond, sir, expire September 30th, 2022, which, as I told you, sir, reflected the 42-month duration within which arrears were to be settled. We are now creating, sir, this new series, which is flexible, sir, because unlike the Series F, which had a defined period of April 1st, 2019 until September 30th, 2022. And I signal certainly to all those persons that claims are due. Like basically where we are, sir, with respect to what we are doing here, we are simply putting a framework in place, sir, to ensure that the settlement of the principal of those arrears can be done over the 42-month period. All of these bonds, sir, as have been the case since we completed the debt restructuring, all of these bonds are capable, sir, of being traded within the context of the open market. And I take this opportunity, sir, just to indicate that because of the nature of the cash flow and the financing of government's program, I say to all parties that the best way and the easiest way for the government to be able to settle, sir, any obligation at this particular point in time is for us to be able to structure out a program within the context of the public finances over 42 months to be able to settle these matters. Because some persons have taken a position, sir, that they want their cash up front, which is not unreasonable in the context of if we were operating in a normal environment. But we are not operating in a normal environment, sir. And whilst the Ministry of Finance and the government would love to be able to settle anybody's obligation up front, the fiscal situation, sir, the situation of the economy in terms of where it is at, does not allow the government the ability to do so and settle with you in full. So the easiest way for us to be able to settle that principle is to do it over the course of 42 months, allowing us to be able to structure out, sir, what it is that we are collecting by way of revenue, what we are paying out in terms of debt service and everything else, sir. And the reality is, sir, that a lot of these claims have been outstanding for in some instances, sir, more than 20 years. So having waited 20 years, we are making a credible attempt, sir, two persons, to be able to settle the obligation that government has to these persons. And I'm saying with all sincerity, sir, that this framework, once agreed, allows us to pay you, sir, through you, sir, pay any Barbadian the obligations that the government may have to honor with them in a structured way. And our policy posture is that clearly, once these are settled and entered into, then the government makes a provision, and every month you get your equal installment, and it allows you to be able to go on and deal with matters. And if persons, sir, are desirous of not operating in this way, then you are left then up to when and how we have any cash that may be available to be able to settle. And therefore, I say to Barbadians, sir, that this is an opportunity for the government to, as we will say, sir, set round things right. And in setting round things right, we got to accept that this is the appropriate way for us, given our circumstances, to be able to settle these matters. The truth is, sir, if persons wish, they can sell any bonds that are issued into the open market. Of course, once you go into the open market, people would expect a discount because they will purchase the bond and they will receive the monies in full over the course of the 42 months. There are options. But I'm saying, with all sincerity, sir, if the government owed you, sir, $10 million, and it owes each member in here $3 million apiece, sir, for example, to require the cash, sir, all in one go, to settle everybody, would mean that the other operations of government for that particular period of time that we simply will not be able to do. and therefore in structuring out over 42 months allows you to get your money, sir, all of us to get our money, as persons for whom government may have an obligation to, over the course of the 42 months, and everybody goes their merry way. There are persons who have insisted that they do not want bonds, sir. They've insisted. Now, if you insist, and I know, sir, this is perhaps a bit contentious, but oftentimes what has happened is that by holding out, of course, you incur more legal fees and all kinds of other things with respect to these matters. And as far as we are concerned, sir, once we have made a credible offer, the reality is that the interest component of a lot of these things will have to be dispensed with, because the expense with respect to being able to afford that does not make financial sense, and all it does is to inflate the settlement. And so we have structured a process that would allow for the government to settle, sir, to settle the obligations. And I regret, sir, that up until now, that a number of these claims have not been settled. But I say to the public that the Ministry of Finance and the government of Barbados is putting this measure in place because some persons at the beginning of this process, sir, regrettably, at the beginning, and I said beginning of the process meaning when we were issuing the Series F bonds, some persons determined that they didn't want any bonds. But I say to you, sir, and the rest of the public, that right now there are just 12 months to go. 12 months to 12? Yes, yes, 12 months to go with respect to the current series, and persons have been receiving their money, sir, since April 2019 up until now. And whilst it may not have been the preferable for them then to accept the structure, a number of people have been paid, sir. And for those who are still holding out, sir, this is now almost 3 years. No, it is 3 years. 3 years since we entered into the program that they could have been receiving, sir, their settlements. And I say to them, go back, look at the numbers, and let us come to the table, sir, and settle these arrangements, because going forward, the accrual of interest and all the other fees associated with trying to negotiate it simply does not make any sense, sir. And regrettably, I think some persons feel very strongly that they should get all their money in cash, but the reality is, sir, we do not have the capacity to settle everybody's obligations up front in cash. That is the reality. We couldn't do it before COVID because we were structuring out in that way to be able to settle it. And certainly since the onset of COVID, sir, it makes it near impossible to do. But we have still reserved that 42-month period that once you agree with the government to settle, that we'll be able to settle the affairs, sir, because this is the best way that we feel that you'll be able to get your settlements done. I will, sir, be proposing an amendment with respect to it, because the bill speaks specifically to the arrears in the context of prior to September 30th, 2018. But as I said, sir, circumstances now are that once the government of Barbados has come to an agreement with an individual or firm or whomever, sir, that this is the framework that we will be operating under with respect to being able to settle. Because for the foreseeable future, until the economy recovers, and even when it recovers, sir, because we have, I'm due to make a statement, sir, with respect to the mid-year review soon, but the reality is, sir, until such time as we are in a position to be able to get to a situation where we can actually make budgetary allocations to be able to have the Attorney General's office be able to settle these matters, we will have to settle matters with respect to 42 months. So the incentive for persons is simply to allow us to negotiate, sir, in good faith, come to an agreement, set the bond structure up, and once issued through the Central Bank of Barbados, you get your money every month. And that way, Barbadians can have a sense of clarity and certainty, sir, with respect to any obligation that government may have to you, and allow us to be able to move forward. Sorry, my iPad gone to sleep, sir. Hold on, give me a sec. Right. Okay, so the establishment of the Series J, sir, simply will be the replacement of not replace. Let me rephrase, sir. As I told you, sir, because the Series F bonds, sir, and there's very limited space there anyhow, because the Series F bonds expires in September 2022, the creation of the Series J allows us to be able to settle those arrears. But for the public, the benefit of the public, and clarity, transparency, everything, sir, that to be able to, if we were to stick to the original framework, sir, which is to settle the arrears between April 2019 and September 2022, is that if we were to attempt to use the Series F structure as currently constituted, the cash requirement between now and September next year, sir, would be significant. And that would mean that a lot of the other government programs will not be capable of execution, because we will be pushing too much cash into the settlement. And regrettably, as I said, there was scope to do it at the beginning, but now that we are here, we now have to make these provisions to be able to ensure. And COVID certainly has not been kind with respect to government finances. As I said, we've moved from a 6% primary surplus, which was intended to help pay down some of these arrears. We are now operating, sir, at a deficit. And because we are operating at a deficit, it means the deficit has to be financed. And deficit financing means, sir, you're borrowing money, obviously, to be able to make up that difference. And that is as a result of COVID, nothing else. There's nothing that this government, and I want to make it clear, sir, just for the avoidance of any doubt, there's nothing that this government has done from a policy perspective, that has created a situation where we are now running a deficit. Because, as I said, sir, we, as you know, we continue to meet. We had met all of our targets with respect to the running of the 3.5% surplus by the end of March 2019. By the end of March 2020, sir, we had achieved the 6% primary surplus, which was part of the program target, sir. COVID hit at the back end of March 2020, when we recorded our first case. And as you can tell, sir, from between April 1st last year, when we met in this very chamber to approve, and I recall indicating, sir, that I do not know of any other point in the history of the country where the government had met on the first day of the financial year to do supplementaries, which we did on April 1st, 2020, to reflect the fact that we had to respond, because having passed the estimates for 2020, for fiscal year 2020-21, just a few days pretty much earlier, the reality is COVID, the anticipated impact of COVID had already started to take root, and we met on the very first day of April of 2020, sir, to pass supplementaries in this house to be able to respond. Because the budget, as previously conceived when we started the process, was no longer particularly relevant to being able to respond to the needs that were required at that time. And therefore, the government's policy response to the pandemic meant that we had to move from what was the 6% primary surplus, which was allowing us to pay down debt, pay down arrears, and still be able to, and we did not need to borrow any monies because we were running a surplus and the program was structured to so do. The impact of COVID has meant now that moving from that 6% primary surplus, we are still paying down debt, we're still trying to do these things, sir, but we had to finance, sir, the operation of government within that construct. And I believe, sir, we have been able to do a very decent job of it so far. I'm asking Barbadians to allow us to get to a place where we can get more economic activity without, sir, coming at the expense of people having to lose their lives. And I think we have a responsibility, sir, to be able to allow us to get to that stage. And so the issuance of these Series J bonds allows us now to refocus some of these outstanding liabilities. And I repeat it again, sir. I repeat it again. For those persons who have determined that they are waiting for cash, I can't swear to you, sir, or anybody, that cash is going to be available like that for the foreseeable future for the government of Barbados to settle all in one go. I think it would be foolhardy, sir. It would be foolhardy to mislead people that that would be the case. And I say it through you, sir, in this honorable chamber, that for persons for whom these obligations apply, to please speak to your counsel or whoever is mediating on your behalf, and let's come to the table, arrange for the settlement of the principal, and let us get these monies paid to you in the quickest way, which is over 42 months. It is not ideal, but this situation that we are in, sir, is far, far from ideal. And therefore, it takes, notwithstanding the tremendous pressure, sir, that the country is under, we still feel it is important to be able to put some monies back into the economy, and the extent for which we are able to do so to settle these long-standing things where the government may have acquired PCR land, sir, to do something, and for whatever reason, sir, you haven't received the monies for it, allow us to be able to come in and to deal with this in a structured way that allows Barbadians to know, sir, that their government is responding to their specific needs, and that people don't feel as if, sir, continue to feel as if they have been taken advantage of. And that, sir, is the clear message that I want to give to the country. The bonds have the usual natural disaster clause, because in the event that obviously something completely disruptive takes place, then the natural disaster clause, which is consistent with the remainder of the debt securities that were issued under the restructuring, are also included here, sir, because as I said, with respect to that, and I think it's important to appreciate that if there was indeed a significant disaster that meant we had to trigger the natural disaster clause, I just want to remind the country, sir, that the ability for us then to be able to finance government's operations in terms of the recovery will be critical. The natural disaster clauses just means that all interests will be capitalized. The amortization is deferred for 2 years in order to allow the government to redirect such said debt obligations with respect to being able to engineer any recovery effort as part of a policy response. And so the clauses are there. The obligations in relation to land acquisition before 30th of December 2018, obligations to the Crown pursuant to clauses of, obligations of the Crown to persons in respect of causes or legal claims instituted against the Crown before 30th of September 2018, and any Barbados denominated arrears incurred or assumed by the Crown before September 30th, 2018. And as I indicated, sir, the issuance clause 5, when we move into to committee, as I said, sir, we will be making an amendment to reflect that going forward, we will be settling all claims in this way with respect to being able to properly manage government's cash flow and allow for these things to be done. And this, sir, is part of what clearly has been an evolving policy response, and the government will continue to monitor what is taking place. I've heard calls for budgets and all kinds of things are being called for, but the reality is, sir, the government is actually busy executing and focusing on the areas for which growth will be generated. And I know that there are some who want to get a little day in the sun, if you like, sir, with respect to how that process is usually managed. But the government continues, sir, to make policy adjustments, and the making of the policy adjustments, sir, is not necessarily to wait for a specific event, but the government has always taken a posture that where policy response is required, we will come to the chamber, announce said policy adjustments, and allow the policies to be implemented in order to continue the management of the public affairs. And so we are at the point, sir, right now in terms of the just completed the half year. The mid-year review will be laid today, sir, and that should be read in conjunction with the fiscal framework that was laid in the middle of August, in the context of where the economy is and where we're going, and the extent to which, obviously, not just the continuation of the reform efforts, but certainly the policy stance that government will undertake with respect to focusing on engineering growth and ensuring then that, notwithstanding what has taken place globally with the disruption of the supply chain and the rise in international commodity prices, that in that context, the engineering of growth is going to be important, but we have a responsibility as Barbadians to allow us to get back to 2019 levels by way of economic activity. The sooner we can do that, sir, the better it will be for everybody else to be able to get through. So the clause 6 speaks to the prepayment clause with respect to the principal, and that is par for the course with respect to the structure of the series year bonds. The schedule, sir, as I said, just outlines the framework with respect to the issuance of the series year bonds. 42 months, no interest, principal to be paid in 42 equal monthly installments, and the natural disaster clause as attached in the schedule is included. And so, sir, this debate, I hope, would have provided some context for the environment in which we are operating. I fundamentally believe, sir, leadership matters. And what we do, sir, how we communicate, that matters, sir. And the extent to which the efforts of all of us, sir, would allow us to continue to make sure that those young people, sir, which I take this opportunity again, sir, as a young man who benefited, sir, from all that Barbados could possibly offer, from primary to tertiary, sir. Remind those young people that what we are talking about here with respect to financing, that in spite of all of the pressure, sir, in spite of the loss of revenue, sir, to the extent that we have still, sir, maintained free, at the point of delivery, sir, education for all Barbadians, from primary to tertiary, even though in a different mode of operation, sir. We have been able to do so, and we will continue to do so, sir, because the development of this country, sir, requires that we give these young people the best chance that they can have to be able to take on the world, sir. But once I say that, sir, I also say to the young people of this country, my peers, my peers, sir, that the world in of itself, sir, is not a bed of roses either. And therefore, how we respond to not just domestic, but certainly external stimuli will determine, sir, the future of this country. And not everything that we want, we will get in the time frame that we will get. As you know, sir, the grandmothers obviously tell you very, very diplomatically, sir. She knows when to tell you no and when to say yes. And as young people, sir, we have to understand that in the context of a perceived environment where you can respond to things instantaneously and get that attention, the reality is that in the real world, sir, things don't work like that. And I think it behoves all of us to remind our young people that hard work, sir, and discipline is what is required to be successful in anything that you do in your life, sir. And there isn't any real shortcuts to success, however you choose to measure success. And therefore, in the way that we are structuring out this bill to be able to respond to what we owe people, I'm saying to young people across the length and breadth of the country, sir, that hard work, discipline is what is required, sir, from all of us, to be able to make the difference with respect to not just the response to the pandemic, because the pandemic will go away at some point. But the point is that hard work and that discipline and the leadership that we would want those young people to be able to undertake 10, 15, 20 years from now, sir, that is the example that we wish to set for them, and to be very candid and to be very honest with respect to the way that we conduct the affairs of this country. And so, sir, the bill before the chamber, as I said, outlines the new framework within which we will be able to settle these matters. And in committee, as I said, sir, I'll be making the amendment with respect to the settlement of current liability. And so, sir, I am satisfied that the government of Barbados and the Ministry of Finance, I am satisfied, sir, that the conduct of our affairs has been done for the benefit of all Barbadians, sir. And I can also indicate to the country that as long as we continue to stay focused as a country, stay focused as a people, sir, that it is well within us to be able to move this country from where it is today to be able to provide opportunities for all of those young people who have had their lives completely disrupted, certainly in the last 18 months. We have all had to respond in various ways to the circumstances. It has not been ideal for anybody, but Barbados is not alone. But the way that this government has been able to conduct itself on your behalf, I think Barbadians can be proud. And I say to those young people, do not allow anybody to mislead you or to lead you down a path that is not the right one. And we must be able to discern saints, sir, from non-saints, sir. And I hope that the young people will take the opportunity not just to spread and propagate things on social media, but if you want to know about anything that we have done on your behalf, you can come to this Parliament's website, sir. And the truth is, sir, I think the Parliament's website is perhaps the best kept secret there is in the country, because whilst we are here conducting the people's business on their behalf, a lot of misinformation is being fed out there, despite the best efforts of the ministries and JS to be able to put information out. I think the Parliament's website, sir, is a treasure trove of information, and I believe that we could possibly do a better job at disseminating said information, sir. But I say to Barbadians, when assertions are being made about things, come to the Parliament's website and read in your entirety and determine for yourself whether or not the government is acting on your behalf or not, whether it's transparent or not. Because there is a notion out there, sir, among some people, that the government isn't transparent. And I would love to be able to say that we can make information available in an instant. We are not yet there yet, but we have always come to this place. We have laid documents in this place. I know people are usually interested only in the Auditor General's report, but the other reports that are laid in Parliament that do not receive the same kind of media coverage. But the point is, sir, we come to this place as we are required to do by the law to present not just bills, but the appropriate documentation about what we are doing in the name of the public. We will continue to do so, sir, and this is just but part of the continuation of that process. So I say to Barbadians, visit the Parliament's website. If you are interested in understanding what is taking place, you can reach out to any of the members to ask questions about what is being done, which we've been trying to respond to, sir. The Ministry of Finance is always available, sir, for queries with respect to what is taking place. And just be assured that your government is not in any way associated with any monies or any reports of monies or anything, sir, that is at the expense of Barbadians. We are all Barbadians, sir. And as Barbadians, I know that we have not done anything to betray the trust of Barbadians with respect to the management of this pandemic. We have not done anything to betray the trust of Barbadians with respect to the management of the finances, sir, with respect to Barbadians. The circumstances of COVID-19, sir, are real, and whilst people may choose to operate in a different space or a different universe or a different reality or whatever they may wish to operate in, sir, we come here to do the people's business. We will continue to do the people's business. And I say to all of the young people in this country, stay focused with respect to this reality that we're operating in, and to stay focused on the opportunities that the government will continue to try to make available, not just in Barbados, but opening up opportunities as well outside of Barbados, because regrettably, the impact of COVID has been such that we really do have to take advantage, sir, of any opportunity that presents itself for the country to be able to move forward and move forward quickly. And so, sir, with those few words, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time. I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And perhaps I might begin by offering to you, Mr. Speaker, as the presiding officer of these honorable precincts, this chamber, an apology to you and to the House, indeed to the honorable member who just sat down, for my part in the earlier confrontation or exchange of words that took place between us. I would want, through you, sir, as well, to offer personally an apology to your guests, especially the younger of the two.
Honourable member who, without any bias or prejudice to you, who is actually from your constituency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and offer personal apologies to your guests, especially the younger of the two. I'm sure that I didn't breach any of the House rules, else you would have advised me as to that. But I consider what I did was a breach of my own tenets of personal behavior etiquette. And certainly I'm not given to that type of practice in talking about what I did for people. And though I did not specify and spoke in general terms, even that constitutes a breach of my personal habit and practice. My wife, Mr. Speaker, in many, 98% of instances, she does not know what I have done in relation to other people, either at the level of the constituency, the church, or the wider Barbadian community. The fact that it was a generalization does not excuse the response which I would have made. Further, even though it was made in response to the honourable member's persistent, over the last 3 years, references to my unworthiness of his vote, that in itself also does not excuse the response which I made. It does not provide a sufficient justification for what I said and how I responded, especially with reference to a member for whom I have high regard and much respect, and of which I have spoken both publicly and to him personally in private as to the honest and hard-working attempt he makes to manage his portfolio. And so I genuinely offer that apology to those who might have taken a sense of offense. None was intended. I am, though, Mr. Speaker, I must say, of the view that if the honourable member did in any way transgress and he had to be punished or penalized, and it were left to me, not yourself, but to me, Mr. Speaker, as to what penalty he should suffer, my prescription would be that he would be made to listen to that speech which he just made, and that would be sufficient bother and sufferation for him. Because absolutely it is, if you think in terms of the bill, one of the longest and at the same time most irrelevant contributions that I have heard made in this honorable chamber. To the extent that he did connect with the bill, ultimately and finally I'm appreciative. But that speech to me personally was painful. It's not for me to judge, Mr. Speaker. I just say in passing, if you have to penalize him at any stage, I would suggest humbly that you ask that he listen back to that speech, and that would be a sufficient pain inflicted. As astounded that the honourable member would suggest that a call, either in the public space or from this position, for Barbadians to be treated to the courtesy of a budget to which they have become annually, to which they have become accustomed annually, and which is expected of any government, any party in office. To suggest that a call for a budget in the interest of the people of Barbados, in the interest of this House, constitutes a desire for a few minutes in the sunlight. Was very disappointing. When we call for a budget, and I do make that call again from this floor right now in this instance, since the honourable member raised it, we call for a budget to be debated in the House in the interests of this House, your constituents and mine, and the wider Barbados, the wider Barbadian public. Can't dismiss it as somebody's desire for 15 minutes or whatever in the sunlight. It is in the interests of Barbadians, in the interests of this Parliament, that we make that call. You see, the public has a right to know. The public of Barbados has a right to know how its financial affairs are being managed. It's not a desire for anybody to find a space or time in the sunlight. It may be all right for the cabinet not to know what is being done in the interests of Barbados. It may be all right for cabinet ministers not to know what is being done, even when it refers to their portfolios. It may be all right to overlook them. It may be all right to think that they're so burdened with other responsibilities, they don't have time to be brought up to speed, and they cannot be burdened with matters pertinent to their portfolio. It may be all right that the cabinet does not know if the cabinet feels that way disposed. If any member of cabinet feels that decisions should be taken with reference to his or her ministerial portfolio and he or she not be advised, he or she not know, that may be all right. But I don't think you are of the view, neither am I, and I pray neither is this Parliament, of the view that it is all right for the House not to know and for the people not to know, to bring and to present a budget to the people of Barbados, and especially so in these difficult times. I mean, you're going to meet with the IMF, and you're going to give them all kinds of accounting and reckoning and reporting, and to call for the same courtesy for the Parliament and for the people of Barbados is his expressed desire for a few moments in the sunlight. That is coming from a Minister of State, Mr. Speaker, and the Minister of Finance. Well, his colleagues may not want to know, but as the MP out of St. Michael West, I want to know, and I speak for you, since you can't underscore, people of St. Michael Central, through you, want to know as well. The Parliament needs to be apprised. We are still operating under a parliamentary system of government. Now, if the cabinet system of government breaks down and ministers don't know what is going down, that's one thing. But this Parliament must know, should know, ought to know. Nobody here is looking for any time in the limelight or in the sun. If we use that analogy, this particular administration, for every one day the leader of the opposition has in the sun, this administration in the hallowed halls of this Parliament has 28 days in the sun for every one that the opposition in this House gets. This administration has 28 days in the sun for every one, if we use that analogy, that the opposition in this chamber gets. And I'll tell you, by the practice which we have become accustomed, which we observe, it's almost 365 days they have in the sun per year, because every day they are on the public media with some kind of press briefing, some type of press conference, and it is repeated 2 times a day, 3 times a day. It preempts news, it preempts all kinds of stuff. And that is endless days in the sun, if you want to use that analogy, Mr. Speaker. So don't come in here and tell us that when we ask what has become of the budget to which we have become accustomed, how are the Barbadian people going to be advised You don't only report to the IMF. IMF did not elect this administration. People of Barbados did. You report to the people of Barbados, and particularly so through this parliament, not only through a controlled media, especially the media entity represented in the Pine, Mr. Speaker. So whether we're talking about vaccines, the people have a right to know. Whether or not we are talking about vaccines acquired or not acquired, paid for, not paid for, it is the people's right to know. That is not about any time in the sun. To get behind a microphone in some sheltered studio and speak a few words unchallenged is insufficient. So whether we're talking about vaccines or we're talking about ventilators, whether they're sufficient and how many are defective and how were their source, the people have a right to know. That's not about any time in the sun, Mr. Speaker. I didn't plan to talk about these things. The Honourable member introduced this line of argument. What, 15 minutes in what sun? Whether you're talking about vaccines, a failed attempt to acquire vaccines, the level of commitment made to the intermediary source. People have a right to know. People have a right to know. How could it be that the Minister of Health did not know? Do we still have cabinet government? Mr. Speaker, the people have a right to know. We can live in the realm of rumor, or we can connect with reality and truth. We do that when people stand up squarely, people who are charged with the responsibility to stand up squarely and give an accounting, whether you're talking vaccines, whether you're talking ventilators. People have a right to know. People have a right to know, Mr. Speaker, whether you're talking about contracts or consultancies. People hardly know anything about these things. They must surmise, they must guess, they must depend upon the informal media or social media to get pickings of news. Because people who are charged with the responsibility for managing and accounting for these things, people who enter into these arrangements, enter into these agreements, feel that they cannot be challenged, they cannot be questioned. That might is always right. So don't tell me about moments in the sun because you call for someone to stand in this house, this place, that legitimizes the spending of taxpayers' money, and you say it's a desire and appeal from somebody to have moments in the sunlight. Clearly, when you make those types of statements, you yourself have been exposed to the sun a bit too long. So whether we're talking contracts or consultancies, the people have a right to know. How many people have been contracted by this government? How many consultancies are existing? What is it costing the Barbadian taxpayer? At a time when you say you're so constrained, according to this bill, you can't pay people cash. How much money are you dispensing daily, weekly, monthly to pay people for services at the high end? And how much of that is absolutely essential? People have a right to know. It's not about moments spent in the sun. Be careful what you say, because when you start down this road, I am going to follow you. When you open this avenue, I will walk into it. So whether it's about vaccinations or vaccines or ventilators, whether it's about contracts or consultancies, whether you are talking about covertly or clear water, the people have a right to know. Still questions over Coverley after all of these years. Still questions about Clearwater yet to be answered. Is it the people's right to know? Is it the right of the people of St. Michael's Central, Mr. Speaker, to know? Is it the right of the people of St. Michael West and St. George South to know? You want to tell me it is not the right of the people of Christchurch East Central to know that? You mean to tell me people of Christchurch East Central will elect somebody here and send them here to this Parliament to represent their interests, and when it is required that their interests be met by an accounting in certain respects, it is dismissed as somebody's call because they want some moments in the sun? Is that what you're saying, Mr. Speaker? Were I to stand and say that, not cognizant, not respectful of, not mindful of the interests of the people of St. Michael West, they should readily and summarily dismiss me? Whether it's Coverley or Clearwater, people have a right to know. Now, Mr. Speaker, in looking at this bill, there is an issue that jumps right out at one. What the bill is attempting to do is to clear some arrears of debt for Barbadians and Barbadian companies, I imagine. Debt owed to people by the state, by the government, for years. I think the honourable members mentioned going back 30 years, I think I heard. And the thing that jumps at you, Mr. Speaker, is that this represents to me what is a perennial practice of injustice in Barbados, where a government acquires land through the Compulsory Land Acquisition Act. Government acquires people's property. And this administration, since it has been here in the last few years, has done it. That is acquired land using the legislation. What this bill speaks of is a perennial practice. It is a practice as old as the hills, where government takes people's land by parliamentary action, and then people are not paid the compensation required under the law. Attempt is being made here to address that in this fashion. Across administrations, it has happened. But it has been B or D. It has happened in Barbados for years. It is an injustice which is ugly, Mr. Speaker. It is an injustice which is institutionalized. It is part of the institutional culture of the state. Now, over the years, it has practiced this. Take people's land and then you do not pay them. Or the court awards. The court fines and awards compensation in the name of people against the state, the government. And then the government does not honor the ruling of the court by ensuring that those monies are paid. It is an institutionalized form of injustice, Mr. Speaker. I am sure, Mr. Speaker, one as widely practiced as you are. One whose repute with reference to success in his field is as well known as it is, as well established as it is. You have had cases on behalf of people acting before the court, where the court has awarded your clients in their favor by dint of your hard work. And then some government somewhere frustrates the process frustrates the process, thwarts the ends of justice. And people are denied justice in that way. This bill speaks to that, paying people for land that we owe them for years, settling debts with people that the court has awarded for years. We have not paid it. This bill speaks to that. That is injustice. That's one of the ugly forms of injustice practiced in this country, and it is institutionalized. Government is the biggest culprit in that regard. You know and I know, Mr. Speaker, that access to justice, when that access is frustrated, is anathema to development of democracy in the way that we want to practice it, since justice is one of the principal planks of our democracy and our governance structure. We have 3 branches of government: the executive, the legislature, the judiciary. The judiciary can do its best and with due diligence. Then you have this ugly practice persisting. Justice being accessed, but at the same time being denied. That is what's happening. This is what this bill speaks to, and I do not know if you can read this bill and not be moved by that consideration. That is a principal plank of the governance model that we have established in Barbados in our democracy under a system of governance and government. People will have access to justice their day in court. Fair play. If you don't have that in a democracy, to me, Mr. Speaker, humbly I suggest you don't have anything. If there's not justice and fair play and equity as far as possible, you have nothing. We can come to 2021 and in terms of our constitutional status, move to the next level, and rightly so. But if we, in our wake, leave this type of ugly practice still installed, still in place, we have nothing. We're going through a cosmetic process with respect to that. The ugly practice calls into question our institutional integrity, the integrity of our institutions, whether it's this honorable chamber, whether it's other public service institutions, whether it's the judicial institutions. It calls into question critical institutions in the fabric, the architecture of this democratic setup we have here in Barbados. You can't take people's land. Cannot take people's land for years, then don't come. It breeds cynicism, Mr. Speaker. It breeds a sense of alienation. In some places, it will lead to very serious expressions of ill behavior and indiscipline. Fortunately, in Barbados, it has not. Fortunately, in Barbados, it has not. People wait patiently. Some of them die and go and don't get their just desserts. I was reading in the recent media on a front page story, a situation connected with Barbados, according to the reports, where a court elsewhere awarded $269 million because of an injustice long perpetrated against the client who was awarded. Barbados connected in that, according to reports in 3 or 4 other countries. This calls our institutions the integrity that should be attaching thereto. People must have confidence in our institutions, that the institutions function in their interests and on their behalf. And this practice breeds cynicism. breeds other things besides cynicism, other undesirable things. You know, Mr. Speaker, I am aware of, and you may be too, of the fact that this type of approach to governing, this type of ugly injustice, this particular delinquency of not paying people what is due to them is weaponized in the Barbadian context. My understanding, political parties use this to keep people quiet, to keep people in line. You want your money, behave yourself. You want your money, keep quiet. You want your money, don't let your opinion be heard on any subject, whether it's vaccines or ventilators or corruption or what. Don't let your voice be heard. Mr. Speaker, I had a man of some means, economic means, financial means, very well off, Mr. Speaker, said to me recently, boy, this and this and this is the case, but I can't say anything. I don't want to think because they got some money for me, and I want to be sure to get it. Yes, I want to be sure to get it. It's not the first time I've heard that. That's the most recent. Not the first time I've heard that. It is weaponized. It's used as a weapon against people. Keep them quiet. Government owes you money. You don't dare open your mouth and criticize anything the government does. And I'm not talking this government. I'm talking government generally. You don't open your mouth to say a word because you live in the hope that you will get your money before you draw your last breath. It's weaponized. So they took your land. They promised to pay. And they will pay you in due course if you wait and be decent about it and be quiet. Keep your mouth shut if anything controversial comes up. So they keep you quiet. They silence you. You see, it is a weapon being used. This is where politics, this is one of the ways, Mr. Speaker, in which politics corrupts the practice of justice. So you work your best in the interest of your client, and a fair judge voices an opinion in support of your argument, and your client wins the case. But the politics of the day corrupts the practice of justice because it thwarts the efforts of the court and it counters the interests of innocent people just seeking their fair recompense. If that doesn't happen, Mr. Speaker, you can correct me. The other side, of course, is that this type of thing is used to facilitate party friends. So if a friend of the party is owed something, we move very quickly to make sure that friend of the party is compensated, gets his or her just due. So it works both sides. It works both sides, Mrs. That is what we live with in a Barbados of today. Now, if this is not the reality, I pray somebody would correct me. I apologize and sit down and not say it again. But if you're friends of those who have the authority, you can wait patiently until your turn comes, because inevitably and most assuredly, your turn will come. You will obviously sometimes even get ahead of others in the line. Others will be waiting before you, but they're not supporters and friends of the party. So they don't get, you get. This is how justice is corrupted and frustrated. It would be good to know, Mr. Speaker, who are those to benefit from this legislative intent of the government. The object of this bill is to pay people who have been owed money up till September 2018, and then the Honourable member went on to say that would be amended to become a more general context. Those who are owed will be paid. Well, it'd be good to know those who are owed, even if only up to September 2018. It'll be good to know, therefore, who is going to benefit from this legislative intent. Is it everybody, Mr. Speaker? Is it everybody owed by the government at this time? Is it everybody owed? If it is not everybody owed, what is the selection criteria for those who have been chosen to have their needs met and to experience finally the workings of justice in their behalf? How were they selected? And why were others not chosen to be compensated in the way in which was promised or which the court ordered? It would be good to know what are the amounts scheduled to be. Nothing so, Mr. Speaker. A long speech about leadership and who should say what and who. I mean, going back there, long speech about, but nothing so. No indication that this is X million or Y billion. No indication that it is 30, 40 people that we're talking about, 10 companies. Nothing like this. Nothing, no information, because the Parliament is not deserving of such information. I mean, after all, if cabinet ministers don't get it, why should the Parliament expect that they would get it? Nothing so. Nothing at all like that. I believe, and the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central really should admit, sadly enough, this is only prompted by IMF imperatives. In other words, International Monetary Fund, under the extended fund facility, that agreement, one of the prescriptions is that this government settles its debts. This is not coming out of the bosom of goodwill of the government. This is coming because it is an IMF requirement, and at due course, you have to report to the IMF. One of the things you have to do, collect what is owed, pay what you owe. That is where this is coming from. This is not charity, not generosity of the government. This is not even motivated by reasonable action. This is motivated by imperatively prescribed IMF conditions. Pay your debt. Pay down your debt. And sometimes, Mr. Speaker, poor people get caught up in this snare. Perhaps if it were only the rich and the famous, though it would bother us, we could sleep a bit better at night. Poor people get caught up in this kind of snare. I remember distinctly a family owed by the government compensation for acquisition of property over 25 years. The guy told me when he called, over 25 years. Talked about it here in this Parliament. I think an attempt now has been made to settle it, but it is one of those attempts with which the persons involved are not totally happy, because government tends to look for every single loophole it can find, and governments tend to look for every single loophole they can find to avoid paying out what is duly owed. So the wealthy get caught up in this snare. And that's bad. But poor people, that is a poor family, not even from St. Michael West, Mr. Speaker. They call me from all around. Not St. Michael Central too, because they know me, not because you aren't doing your job. They call me because they know me. I've lived there, I served there. Run all around that place. So they call me, not because you aren't doing your job, Mrs. Speaker. They call me because they know me. They can find me too. They can reach me. This person, this family is from St. Michael South Central, not even Central. South Central. Reverend, government owes this money for so long, getting the runaround, can't get a cent. 25 years plus for land that they acquired. 25 years, Mr. Speaker. And I know that family. And the generations of that family that have passed on in that time. But this is what happens. This is par for the course, and the bill seeks to change this. But I say this is prompted, sadly enough, by IMF prescribed imperatives. This bill tells me that no interest attaches to this debt settlement, you know. This bill provides for payment over 42 months. This bill prescribes for deferred payments in certain circumstances. That 42 months can become 142 months, you know, Mr. Speaker, given the right circumstances. But this bill speaks of no interest attaching to this 42-month business. You know what this is, Mr. Speaker. We've come here before. The phrase forced savings rings a bell. You know, there's a BOSS program, BOSS, a BOSS plan, a BOSS scheme. You know what it was originally defined as by the government, Mr. Speaker? Forced savings, forced investment. When that did not go down too well out there in the public space, government pulled back and started to redefine the terms. It's a BOSS scheme. The BOSS move. It's a BOSS move. Forced savings, forced investment. This is what it is. We owe you some money, but we ain't paying you, we're giving you bonds. That helps you to save, and over time you would get that and get that. This is a forced action upon persons, many of whom perhaps would prefer that it be approached otherwise, but government makes the excuse, we don't have the cash to do it because we're busy spending that cash on consultants and contracts and this and that. So we don't have the cash. We have to give you bonds. In a climate where, in a context where there's no heavy appetite, no healthy appetite for government paper. The minister himself, who last spoke, said that himself. There's no healthy appetite for government bonds, government paper, but we're giving you some because we have to settle this debt. We ain't paying you cash. We're giving you bonds. And you have to take these bonds. It's a forced action. Not since government debt restructure, when so many people exercise pain, so many institutions experience pain, I should say. There has not been any healthy appetite for government paper. We tell people, you remember we told people, Mr. Speaker, it's optional. Optional. Is a BOSS move. Purportedly, it was said, this is a good way of engaging in investment and earning from your investment, especially for lower and middle income people, especially for public service. We heard all of that, and I got up in here, Mr. Speaker, you would recall, because you have a memory as long as elephant. And they were reporting with loud boast, with 95% buy-in by public servants in this BOSS scheme. 95% of the public servants want this, based on a meeting poorly attended, a representative number of public servants, some of whom voted for this thing, others dismissed it, but the loud boast was made, 95%. I counted that in here, and it was dismissed. My view then still holds now. It was an attempt to relieve government of the expenditure of meeting public servant salaries fully and diverting some of those funds to be used in other projects. And that ultimately it would not be public servants that would benefit, but people who had the disposable income who would snap up those bonds. Ask what has been the reality. Ask and discover, find out, Mr. Speaker, what has been the reality. And a lot of that which has been snapped up on what they call, I think, the secondary market. You know, but they made a boss move, according to them. It's not public servants, especially those near the bottom, but it's people with means and people with money that were able to benefit from those bonds. That's left a bad taste, a poor appetite for bonds among majority of Barbadians. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have to say, because this government is very loud in pronouncements about climate change, the fact that the climate, the environment around us has changed significantly because of this global factor, phenomenon we call climate change. It's impacting Barbados already, we are told, significantly. There's a natural disaster clause in this bill. Put simply, if a natural disaster of certain proportions, and we have experienced some of them in recent times, and in the context of climate change, it is anticipated, I am sure, or feared, I am sure, by this government that we will probably face a couple of those events going forward in the next few years. More than a couple. There's a natural disaster clause, and here it says, we give you bonds over 42 months, we will pay you. But if a natural disaster event takes place under the CRIF policy to which we are subscribed, then we will defer that payment. You ain't getting that money for, we will defer. Payment is stopped and resumed at a later date. That is in there, you know. If I were to ask you, Mr. Speaker, if I were to ask any member of this House, and none of us here claim to be prophets, none, stress that. If I were to ask any of us here, do we imagine that in the next 2-3 years, 3.5 years, we're going to experience weather events in this country that can constitute the premise for invoking this natural disaster clause? Do you think we're going to experience anything like that? The answer resoundingly by everybody would be yes. Because that is the world in which we now live. Whether it is freak, whether it is predicted, whether it is torrential rains unexpected, that provides for catastrophic situations, whether it's in Western Barbados or Central Barbados or Southern Barbados. Anybody in here would surmise that within the next 2 or 3 years, we will probably find ourselves subject to some such event, more likely events that will constitute the basis for invoking this clause and deferring those payments, which we say will take place over 42 months. In actuality, maybe much more than 42 months. That is the reality which sadly we face. When we read bills like this, and governments attempt to provide for responding to these types of debts, the question still looms large with me and with many in this public space, Mr. Speaker, as to how government is going to manage its debt going forward. Yes, out of necessity, we have borrowed millions and millions and millions of dollars. A lot of it COVID-related, and perhaps such borrowings can be justified by reference to what we have done to respond to the COVID threat, which has been real. We've also borrowed to supplement reserves, foreign reserves, because we say, when we arrived, this is your words, we had about $400 million in reserves. Now we got about 2.6 billion, 2.9 billion. But we've had to borrow to achieve that. And we justify the borrowing, and acceptably so, and acceptably so, in relation to what we have had to do with reference especially to COVID. We say that loans have been policy-based loans, but they've had to be policy-based loans because we're borrowing from the international institutions, some global, some regional. So they had to be policy-based loans. And there are low-interest loans as compared to previously, and thank God they have been. And all of this we use to justify the accumulation of debt. And I don't think the argument is that you didn't have to borrow. The argument is that how are you going to manage repayment of the debt going forward? The debt to GDP ratio in Barbados has been negatively affected. This government came with a promise to reduce the debt. We went down, I think it was about 127% of GDP at one stage. And then we ran on some hard times. A lot of it triggered by COVID. I think if I'm right, last figures I was appraised of, 150% now. We started at 160, 170, went down 127. We're back up to 160% of GDP and climbing, largely because of the tourism meltdown due to COVID. And one of the things we say is, it's not so much that we've borrowed that much, it is that the GDP threshold has been reduced because of the lack of economic activity because of tourism. The GDP came down. So obviously the debt ratio to that GDP would increase. That's one of the arguments put forward. There are a lot of arguments we can go back and forth with on this matter of this debt. And because of the COVID impact upon Barbados, we've had to do some fiscal expansion in order to keep Barbados afloat, in order to ensure sustainability, survivability for many families across Barbados who had lost their employment, job, and income. All of these arguments, some hold water easily. All of these arguments can be put forward, and we're familiar with that. But, Mr. Speaker, the burning question, the one that is never answered by this government, we justify the borrowings, and reasonable persons, I presume, can understand the need to borrow in the context of the borrowings. But a question which is not answered is, Mr. Speaker, how are we going to manage the matter of repayment going forward? There are some who would suggest we are mortgaging our future. Mr. Speaker, you're a man of much means. It is alleged. You're a man of great substance. And Mr. Speaker, he who attempts to speak out of Christchurch East is equally a man, or perhaps more so a man, of immense substance. And neither of the two of you, Mr. Speaker, would want to mortgage your children's future. And if you have mortgage commitments, you want to pay that down and not leave that for your children to pay. What we're doing right now in Barbados is mortgaging our children's future and accumulating a debt level which we are justifying and can arguably so justify, but are not suggesting clearly in any terms how are we going to repay that? How our children will repay that going forward. Our debt must be pushing up to about $14 billion by now. Not sure it's the exact figure, maybe 13, 12, $14 billion. Hey, Barbados debt. Barbados debt. Pushing up to 13, $14 billion by now. Last year we've borrowed probably a whopping $1.5 billion. 2021. That's a lot of borrowings, Mr. Speaker. The thing about this debt, Mr. Speaker, it is that it is denoted or denominated in foreign dollars. This debt has to be repaid in foreign dollars. They in Barbados dollars. I talk about debt levels in foreign dollars. That will have to be repaid in foreign dollars. You can't pay in Barbados dollars or EC dollars. This is hard, popular foreign currency traded in global circles. We have to find that. Now, Mr. Speaker, if you are going to repay that and repay that in foreign exchange, you have to get the foreign exchange. This government never says to us. This government says to us, we have accumulated this debt, and this debt is justified. COVID brought this on us. This government never says, look, but this debt has to be repaid by our children, and it is denoted in foreign dollars, and therefore we have to get the foreign exchange to pay back this debt. Mr. Speaker, whence will it come? I repeatedly ask, where is the clear plan, clear platform, clear program for growth such that the Barbados economy can perform to the extent that we do not have to so heavily rely on borrowings, but that there be a proper mix of borrowings and earnings. The government boasts of borrowings, justifies borrowings, does not speak to earnings, has outlined no clear strategy or plan to earn. We're kicking this debt can down the road and wrapping this millstone around the necks of our children with the potential to carry them under. This is what we're doing today. No satisfactory answer has been advanced. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that there are those who will be paid that which they are owed. This means outlined in this bill under which they will be paid, again, is by the use of bonds, Series J bonds. And they are subject to a natural disaster clause, which can defer payments beyond 42 months. And in the original instance of that 42 months, there is no interest rate attaching to it. It is an attempt, I would hope, to correct an injustice which perennially has persisted in Barbados, where people are unfavored by the system, notwithstanding what the court has said, notwithstanding what their rights are under law and law established by this very Parliament. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the sitting until 2:45 p.m.
I didn't hear Honourable.
2:45 p.m.
Questions that this Honourable Chair will be suspended until 2:45 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands suspended until 2:45 p.m.